Hi everyone, it's Kendall, and I'm so happy to be back on the mic. I did take a short pause, partly to breathe, partly to wrangle farm life. I work for 2 other companies aside from my family farm, so it's been just a lot to balance, but I've missed these conversations. You, me, usually a cup of coffee or tea, talking about animals, nature, and all the wonderfully strange ways they intersect with human life. Today, I'm going to pull us into a topic that's playful, historical, and just a little mysterious: barnyard superstitions. You're possibly thinking, superstitions on a farm? Don't you just feed the animals and muck out the stalls? And yes, sure, farm life has plenty of practical, sweaty, everyday chores. But if you zoom back a few hundred years, barns weren't just workspaces. They were full of meaning, mystery, and observation. People watched their animals like little barometers, weathermen, even fortune tellers. Chickens, goats, horses, geese, they weren't just animals. They were messengers. They were signs of luck, warnings of change, and sometimes even omens of death. And honestly, some of these stories are so strange and charming that I can't resist sharing them with you. But before we dig into those big stories, let's warm up with a few fast facts. The kind you can keep in your back pocket and toss out at a trivia night or something. Horseshoes. Hang one above the barn door, and you weren't just decorating. People believed it protected against lightning and evil spirits. Point it up, you're collecting luck. Point it down, and you're spilling it all over the ground. Sacred chickens. Yes, in ancient Rome, entire military campaigns depended on chickens. If the birds ate eagerly, soldiers marched. If they refused food, the generals sometimes canceled battles. Imagine telling your commander, "Sorry, sir, the chickens aren't hungry. We can't go to war today." In some European regions, black sheep, aka LC, are Shetland sheep. Well, black sheep were bad luck because you couldn't dye their wool easily. In others, they were prized because their wool was already a gorgeous natural black or brown. Same animal, but totally different meaning depending on who you asked. Now, if a swallow nested in your rafters, it was considered a blessing of prosperity. Farmers would never disturb them. Even today, kind of like Dalby, many feel a little thrill of luck when swallows return each spring. And lastly, in 19th century England, it was said that if a frog hopped into your milk pail, it would spoil the butter. Personally, I'd argue the frog was the biggest problem of all. Let's get him out of the milk, okay? See what I mean, though? These stories are strange but fun, like little postcards from the past. All right, chickens and eggs. Let's start there, because honestly, they get the biggest spotlight in barnyard superstition. As I had said before, in ancient Rome, sacred chickens were practically celebrity birds. Military priests, augurs, would feed them before big battles. And as I said before, pecking at the grain with enthusiasm meant it was a green light. But if they didn't eat, soldiers would delay their plans. There's a famous story of a Roman commander who got so annoyed at the chickens' refusal to eat that he threw them into the sea, shouting, "If they won't eat, let them drink." Spoiler alert, his army lost that battle. Back in rural Europe, farmers treated chickens like little weather forecasters. If hens roosted low to the ground, it meant rain. If they dust bathed at unusual hours, a storm might be brewing. Even the way a rooster crowed could signal the weather. Now, it was not always right, but it does show just how much attention people paid to these everyday creatures. And then there were the eggs themselves. Eggs weren't just food, they were magical objects. Some villages buried eggs under thresholds to keep out witches. Others scattered eggshells in gardens to ward off bad luck. Collecting eggs early in the morning was said to protect livestock from spirits. I love how chickens carried this double identity. On one hand, completely ordinary, breakfast on legs. On the other, mystical, sacred. It's honestly such a reminder that even the most common animals can take on incredible meaning. And they did. Now, moving back to sheep and goats, often lumped together, but folklore treated them very differently. I already mentioned the black sheep. Today, we call someone the black sheep of the family if they're the odd one out. But originally, it wasn't always an insult. In some regions, black sheep were considered bad luck, mainly because their wool couldn't be dyed. But as I suggested in the fast facts, black wool was also considered rare and natural and highly valued. Farmers loved having one in the flock, and so do we. We love Elsie. It's a great example of how superstition is all about perspective. Sheep could be omens. Celtic traditions said that if sheep walked in circles, it predicted a death in the family. Spooky, yes, but again, shows how closely people tied human fate to animal behavior. Goats, on the other hand, well, they have a wilder reputation. Medieval Europe often linked them to the devil. Those horns, those rectangular eyes, that mischievous personality. But in Norse mythology, goats had heroic status. Thor's chariot was pulled by two goats, Tangrisnir and I can't do it. I don't know. Someday I will be able to pronounce things like this. But not only did they pull a god's ride, they could be eaten and then regenerate the next day. Imagine having an animal that doubles as dinner and transport and then comes back the next morning like nothing happened. I mean, maybe that would be the perfect scenario, although I could never eat a pet. But anyway, on the softer side, goats were sometimes part of weddings and ceremonies. Farmers would bring them to bless couples with fertility and prosperity. Again, same animal, devil, trickster, or bringer of blessings. That's the goat for you. Complicated, stubborn, and never just one thing, ever. Ask Sheldon. Now, on to the barnyard workhorses. Literally, horses and donkeys carried as much folklore as they did farm loads. The horseshoe, as I mentioned, is one of the most famous. Hanging one above your door wasn't about rustic charm. It was about protection. People believed iron scared away evil spirits, and the U-shape captured luck. Lightning strikes, bad weather, witches. The horseshoe is like an all-purpose shield. White horses also held special meaning. In Britain, spotting a white horse was considered lucky or a sign of change. There's even an old saying that you should hold your breath until you see a white horse to make a wish come true. That might take a long time. Maybe don't do that. And then there are donkeys. Often overlooked, but in folklore they were guardians. Many donkeys have a natural cross-shaped marking along their back. In Ireland and other places, that marking was seen as a holy sign. Some traditions even had families bring a sick child to a donkey for healing. The donkey's quiet, steady nature gave it this aura of protection, which I love that. And while horses got the glory, donkeys quietly carried a reputation for kindness and care. And it is a dream here at Dalby. Someday, maybe in the near future, we will be home to a donkey. But not yet. Birds were everywhere on farms, and their reputations flew far beyond the barnyard. In Roman legend, geese actually saved the city. Invaders crept up quietly at night, but the geese honked so loudly, which is not hard for me to imagine, that the guards were alerted, and the city was spared. Honestly, not bad for birds that most people see as lawn ornaments. I will say, though, I mentioned this about chickens in a previous episode. I think literally the last one I did. Honestly, the chickens do this too, but the geese are arguably louder. If something's weird up back, something maybe there's a hawk in the sky, something is off, they will sound that alarm. So this is not hard for me to imagine. And, ducks, they had weather powers too. Loud quacking, rain was on the way. In some places, farmers tracked their ducks as carefully as we track the Weather Channel today. Owls and crows had more ominous reputations. An owl hooting near your barn could be a sign of death. A crow circling overhead might predict misfortune. But in other traditions, these birds were considered wise, guardians of secrets. Even feathers carried power. Goose feathers were sometimes tucked into clothing or charms as protection against the evil eye. I guess you would just imagine carrying a little feather in your pocket like a lucky stone. And ever since episode 20, we have adopted a new segment called While We're At It. So while we're at it, let's zoom out for a second, shall we? Superstitions weren't random. They were part of a bigger world of weather lore. Red sky at night, shepherd's delight. Red sky in the morning, shepherd's warning. That rhyme is ancient, even appearing in the Bible. And scientifically, it holds up. A red sunset means high pressure and stable weather coming in. A red sunrise often means the opposite. Storms are on the way. And then there's the classic, cows lying down means rain is coming. People laugh at this one, but modern studies show cattle do rest more when humidity rises. It may not be foolproof, but there's a kernel of truth in it. Even plants joined in. Clover leaves turning upward were said to signal rain. Pine cones closing meant damp weather ahead. All of this tells me something important. Farmers weren't making stuff up. They were practicing a kind of folk science. Careful observation passed down through generations. And sure, not every superstition holds water, oh my gosh, but many of them came from real patterns in nature. What I love most about all of this is how it shows humans have always searched for meaning in the everyday. Barns weren't just survival spaces, they were story spaces. Superstitions turned daily chores into lessons, warnings, even bits of hope. Animals weren't just resources, they were companions, guides, symbols. A horseshoe nailed to the door, a swallow's nest in the rafters. that cute black sheep in the flock. Each detail carried weight, not just wool or eggs, but meaning, tangible, literal meaning. Even today, I don't know if we're aware of this, but I think we're hungry for that connection. I think that we largely feel something missing. Maybe we don't believe a frog in the milk pail will ruin our butter, because it obviously would, hello, but we still look at animals with a kind of wonder, don't we? When a goat stares at you with those weird rectangular pupils, or when geese start honking up a storm before the weather shifts. These are little reminders that the world is full of tiny signals, if only we'd notice them. So maybe you'll hang a horseshoe above your door, or perhaps you'll notice the swallows returning each spring. Maybe you'll just laugh at your local ducks and wonder if they're predicting rain right now. Either way, you'd be tapping into a long, beautiful tradition of humans finding meaning in and with animals. Until next time, take care. Thank you for listening. Good to be back. If you enjoyed this episode, please share, leave a comment, maybe a question I can answer in a future episode. Subscribe to the channel, you know the whole deal. And of course, you can visit dolbyfarm.com. We do ship nationwide. Our country store has something for everybody. So I hope, and please know that all purchases, I believe it's at least 50% of each and every purchase goes directly back to the care and upkeep of this family farm. So we thank you very much. I hope this finds you well, and we'll see you next time. Oh, and don't forget to appreciate the rare and wonderful things in life.